sure I have everything set up here. All right, is the screen sharing working?
Yes, sir.
Yep. Fantastic. Okay, so as I said, this is the presentation that I gave, actually, I think like a month ago to the day at the eTourism Summit in San Francisco, which Tony and I attended. Was a pretty well-received session, had some good feedback. So the goal for this is just for everyone here on the sales team to hopefully get some good takeaways and some good talking points for your contacts with travel and tourism clients, and going to try and make sure to get through this in a timely manner, just for two reasons: to be mindful of everyone's time and also to allow everyone to pepper me with questions and clarifications, anything that you feel maybe you've been glossed over or anything that could possibly help you in your conversation. So they had asked me to talk about email marketing in a mobile world. I kind of pivoted a little bit from that, but anyway, let's get started. Theoretically, there we go. Everyone knows who I am. We don't need to waste time on this slide. So one of the things that is important when talking about travel and tourism is to establish context and really take a look at where the travel marketing world is, because it's changed a lot in the last couple of years. Really, the last 2.5 years have seen some really seismic changes for travel and tourism marketers. The big one is that Google has essentially declared war upon travel marketers, from travel agents to convention and visitors bureaus to state tourism organizations. Basically, if you work to promote travel, Google has its sights squarely aimed upon you. About 2 years ago, they first launched the Google Flight Finder, which, if you're searching for, say, flights to Baltimore, Maryland, or to Atlanta, Georgia, it will populate flights that it has found through its own search engines, and it will display those results above the results of online travel agents like Expedia, of even the airline carriers themselves, America, United, so on and so forth. Then on top of that, they then launched the hotel search widget, which essentially acts the same way. If you search for a hotel in Madison, Wisconsin, it's going to show you what Google's own results above anything else. And then about 6 months ago, they launched, I'm sure you guys have seen, the hotel search carousel, which shows the top reviewed and top rated hotels in a destination. We're going to get to that in a little bit. But really the biggest thing that Google has done in the last 18 months is to launch the Field Trip app, which initially launched on Android and then about 8 months ago came out on iOS for both iPhone and the iPad. We're going to talk about this in detail here on the next slide, but it has pretty much changed the entire game for travel and tourism marketing. Another thing to be mindful of is that TripAdvisor at the beginning of September was ranked as the most trusted website on the internet. And that's because of the plethora of authoritative and real content, or ostensibly real content, that is on it. People are going to want really honest stuff as opposed to material that's been filtered by an 8-person marketing team and it's been vetted by a CEO and an outside consultant has put in buzzwords and your SEO consultant has thrown in a bunch of keywords to try and stuff it. It's just a matter of real authoritative content being what people want. Budgets are extremely tight, especially in the convention and visitors bureau sector. Convention and visitors bureaus, they're funded by the hotel motel room tax in municipalities and counties. But over the last 2.5, 3 years or so, in an era of tightening budgets for cities and counties, they've started to siphon off more and more of that hotel room tax to fulfill shortcomings in their own budgets. So money's tight, and every dollar needs to essentially fulfill the function of $3. Next generation travelers are smart travelers. Peter Greenberg of CBS wrote an excellent piece about this last month, saying that next generation travelers are going through multiple channels and really looking for the best content and the most reliable content and the best deals that they can find. They're not really looking for a one-stop shop anymore. And then finally, the other piece of context that we need to look at is that inboxing is always a challenge, but it is especially more difficult now as we're in the full throes of the holiday season with now less than 60 days until 2014. So let's talk about the Field Trip app, which has a remarkable blow towards the relevance of Convention and Visitors Bureau. This is an app that was essentially developed by Google's Skunkworks team called Niantic Labs, and it's an amazing location-aware app that notifies you of restaurants, local deals and offers, cool events, cool historical markers, everything like that. But it's all happening in real time. So I could be walking around the Capitol Square in Madison, Wisconsin, and I could pass by a building that goes back to 1850 something, and something really neat happened there. And Google has a historical marker about the building, its events, its history, things like that. My phone will vibrate, it'll chirp at me, and it will pop up this card automatically. When I pull my phone out of my pocket, this card is already displaying, telling me all this information about the Orpheum Theater. So that data is coming from Google's own database. When they bought Zagat about 2 years ago, and then they picked up Frommer's Travel Guides a little over a year ago, no one really knew what they were planning on doing with all of that data, especially once they sold the Frommer's name back to the original owners. But Google is sort of like the robot Johnny Five from the Short Circuit movies. They want input. They want lots and lots of input. And that's what those purchases did. Those purchases allowed them to launch this app. And as a result, if you're a Convention and Visitors Bureau and you're throwing $5, $10, $15, $20,000 at a mobile app, in my past career, I once got a quote for a mobile app north of $40,000. If you're doing that, you're better off putting all of your money in a bag, lighting it on fire, and tossing it into the nearest body of water, because Field Trip has essentially made your mobile apps completely and utterly irrelevant. Now, that being said, while there is still a significant threat to the relevance of travel and tourism marketers, more than ever, the way to win, the way to be an effective marketer in travel and tourism is to deliver smart and personalized marketing. And there are very few channels better suited to do that than email marketing. So the first question to travel and tourism marketers is, are you personalized? And that's a deceptively complicated question. So a while back, it used to be that using dedicated email service providers as opposed to just batching and blasting through Outlook, listing your name as the recipient and then BCCing a couple hundred people, obviously people started to realize that just didn't work anymore. So using some segmentations, maybe putting the first name in the subject line or in the body of an email, yeah, that was cool. That was good enough for a while. But true personalization and truly effective personalized content goes a lot deeper than that. For travel and tourism marketers, affinity is one of the best possible ways to deliver that personalized content. It's an absolute great tool. The screenshot that you see here is from Visit Baltimore's website. They're a longtime What Counts client. And when you sign up for their monthly Baltimore Buzz newsletter, you can select exactly what areas of content that you want to receive. So, for example, when I was living in Baltimore for the past year, I wanted to learn about dining. I'm always interested in deals. And as a longtime student of history, I was always interested in history and heritage. So when the Visit Baltimore team sent out their email through the What Counts smart marketing engine, they would simply build out their email every month, and then dynamically the system would see that I, for example, wanted history, dining, and deals, and I would only get that specific content in my inbox, as opposed to someone who wanted to get multicultural information, and they may have been a meeting planner, and they had a family too, so they wanted to hear about vacations. And they got that specific content in their inbox. It was all dynamically generated, all done automatically. That's a huge tool for a marketer, because that means you're delivering the right message to the right person at the right time, as opposed to forcing someone to wade through a bunch of chaff before they finally get to the wheat. So I would encourage any travel and tourism marketer to be collecting information by interest if at all possible. So you can make sure that the information you're sending to those subscribers is not only timely, targeted, and relevant, but also very, very valuable. Another part, an essential part of email marketing, is to be everywhere you can be. So as a travel and tourism marketer, think of it, you have a ton of competitors. You are competing with essentially every other city in the United States and well beyond. So you could even say that you're competing with every other city across the world, every other destination in the world. Someone has to actually make the choice to select your destination out of everywhere else they could be going. So if you aren't everywhere humanly possible to make it as easy as possible for someone to give you their email address, for someone to sign up for your social media outlets, for someone to just say, yes, send me a flyer, send me a guidebook, just send me an email that says, here's how to get more information from us, here's how to get in touch with us. If you aren't doing that, something has gone terribly and horribly wrong with your email marketing program. Do not pass go directly to jail, do not collect $200. Now at the same time though, when you are collecting that information, you need to be very, very clear to set your expectations. We've talked about this as a very basic email best practice. Let them know how often they're going to get that email. Let them know what day they're going to get it. Are they going to get it in the mornings? Are they going to get it in the evenings? Is it going to be just, on a weekend? And let them know especially what they're going to be getting from your communication. If you say you're going to be offering them deals and discounts, but instead you're just trumpeting out press releases from your area partners, it's really not going to create that kind of connection, that kind of warm fuzzy that you really want to get as a travel and tourism marketer. So making it as easy as possible to opt in, being everywhere, that can take many, many different avenues. Obviously, a sign-up form on your website is an excellent tool. This is what Counts Client, the Asheville, North Carolina Convention and Visitors Bureau. Their email sign-up is right above the fold on their website. They're simply asking for an email address and a zip code. If you aren't collecting zip codes when you are registering subscribers, you need to be. Another great way is an SMS to opt-in campaign. We're going to look at a great example of that here in just a moment. A Facebook page tab that allows you to collect email addresses on your Facebook page. Put a Facebook Connect button on your website so someone can simply click that Connect button rather than manually type anything in. If you're a hotelier, just have a QR code at your hotel front desk encouraging people to scan it, put in their email address, and they get a free drink ticket at the bar, something like that, something that doesn't really cost you anything outside of a couple cents for a drink, but you're gaining an email address. And why I am saying it's so important to have that email address is because it is your most valuable asset as a digital marketer. Everybody loves Facebook. Everybody loves Twitter, especially now that they're doing their IPO this week. A certain subset of the population loves Google+. There's something wrong with them, but we'll let them do their thing. The thing is that you don't own those things unless you own a little bit of Facebook stock, or you buy a little bit of Twitter stock, or you own a little bit of Google stock, which would be difficult considering their stock price is well over $1,000 right now. They can turn your Facebook page off tomorrow for any reason whatsoever. Having a Facebook page is essentially the same as at-will employment. They can turn it off whenever they want. Your Twitter account can get suspended for no reason whatsoever, then they just don't like you. And if that gets turned off, those 15,000 followers you had on Twitter, they're gone. There's no way to get them back. But those email addresses you get, as long as they're opted in, they haven't opted out or unsubscribed, those email addresses are yours. You can take them wherever you want. You can change email service providers 6 times in a year. I would strongly recommend against that, but you can. And those email addresses can follow you wherever you go. That is your own database. That's the one touch point you completely and totally own. So I mentioned an SMS to opt-in campaign. So going back to Visit Baltimore, in the summer of 2012, they held an event called Sailabration, which brought a ton of sailboats, and with those sailboats, a ton of visitors and tourists to Baltimore's Inner Harbor. So Visit Baltimore partnered with some of their valued hotel partners, And they did an SMS to opt-in promotion for that event. They had signs all over the Inner Harbor encouraging people to send a message to a particular short code and then enter their email address. By opting in through that method, they received Baltimore area deals, so coupons at restaurants and hotels, and hotel discounts, as long as they booked by the end of September of that year. The event, I believe, was held in June of 2012. They had to book a return visit by the end of September. So it was a real quick and immediate touch point. It was great for the hotels because they were trying to get as many hotel rooms filled in the future as possible. It was great for Visit Baltimore because Visit Baltimore's job is to get heads in beds, which is to say its job is to keep the hotels as full as possible. So that's an immediate touch point that was capitalized upon, and it's an excellent example of an SMS campaign. And part of being everywhere means you got to be readable everywhere. You know, Experian said in a press release on September 1st of this year that greater than 50% of all emails are finally being opened on mobile devices. Now, that being said, just because someone's on a mobile device does not necessarily mean that they're on the go. PayPal says, and they continue to say, they have held these statistics for the last several years, that a majority of purchases that are made on a mobile device, be it a phone or a tablet or a phablet, more than 60% of them are actually happening at home. So someone's on the couch, they're scrolling through emails on their iPad and watching TV, and, you know, okay, Amazon one click, well, you know, that gets all of us in trouble here and again. But what it means is that those devices are becoming more and more a center of commerce. So as travel marketers, it is important that all of your communications aren't just rendered for the desktop. You're not just focusing on the web experience. You're not just focusing on the desktop email experience. You need to be everywhere that you can possibly be. Another important part about being a travel marketer is it's kind of scary. I get it. It can be a little painful, but we've got to embrace the reviews. So online travel sites, or online review sites, TripAdvisor, Yelp, Google Places, Google Plus for local, all of those sites, those are your friends because there is a huge correlation between a high volume of positive reviews and your own search rankings. The folks at Digital Marketing World did a study of hotels in, I believe, 70-some cities, gauging their number of reviews and their placement in the Google Hotel Carousel that I mentioned earlier in this presentation. Again, there is a very, very strong correlation. So if you're getting reviews, you need to embrace that. You can't be afraid of going back to what I said earlier about embracing honest, real, authoritative content. Stuff that, theoretically at least, is being typed by a real, live, breathing human being. And one of the other reasons that reviews are so important is overcoming what my friend Troy Thompson, who's the principal of the Travel 2.0 Consulting Group, he calls it the certainty gap. And his thesis is that planning a trip, that isn't the issue for you as a travel marketer. People are going to plan their trip. They're going to go to Expedia. They're going to buy their tickets to this museum. They're going to figure out their hotel. They're going to book their reservations at this restaurant that they've always wanted to try. They're going to do that. There are more than enough avenues for them to do it. Our job as a travel marketer is to give prospective travelers the confidence that doing all of this work, that packing up the dogs in the kennel and taking them to be boarded, that taking the kids over to grandma's and having them babysit for a week, or cramming the kids in the car and driving 3 hours, doing all of that, and then additionally putting out the let's be honest, not insignificant financial outlay that travel often represents, giving them the confidence to say, yeah, hey, it's okay. This is actually a really good idea. Troy puts it best. Your job is to convince the traveler they can overcome those concerns. To give them a pat on the back and says, hey, it's okay. This is going to be fun. Let's get over this hump and let's have a really, really awesome time. A hot buzzword for probably the last 20 years, but it's becoming more and more meaningful now given the proliferation of multiple devices and multiple channels from web, email, social, and so forth, is convergence. So web and email, any mobile marketing program you have, any social marketing program you have, those all need to be supporting one another. And by supporting one another, that involves identifying your success metric for each channel and asking yourself how those channels can help you achieve it. There is a mindset among some travel marketers that because we're selling a destination, we're selling an idea, we're selling a place as opposed to a tangible packaged product, that, okay, we're travel marketers, we're special flowers, and we don't really have to abide by standard best practices in marketing, and that's absolutely wrong. That's wrong, and that is a path to destruction. The 3 questions you need to ask yourself, whether you're a travel marketer, whether you're a retailer, whether you're a publisher, whether you're a banker: who am I talking to? What am I saying to them? And what do I want them to do after they see this message? And a huge way to help achieve those success metrics is to ensure that your cross-channel experience is consistent. I go back again to the example of the Asheville, North Carolina Convention and Visitors Bureau. Now, I'm not saying that you need to have your exact website header replicated upon your mobile website and that your website header needs to be crammed into your email header. I'm not saying that at all. But the look and feel, the tone, that all needs to be consistent, going back to overcoming the certainty gap. You don't want to have a great desktop experience and then have a mobile website or have an email that looks like it was patched together by an intern earning $5 an hour who's fresh out of high school, and, well, his dad owns a design firm and, he's getting some freelance work. That's not the kind of event you want to be projecting. You're trying to project a consistent, encouraging cross-channel experience, because at the end of the day, travel is an aspirational sale. It's a long-form sale, but it's aspirational. You're essentially selling and marketing a dream. When you have someone in your destination, or when you have someone even thinking about traveling to your destination, you want them to be thinking, okay, wow, this visitor's guide is neat. I really need to see more about this. When they're in your destination, you want them to say, okay, maybe I need to extend my stay another day. Maybe I need to book another room or book another night at this hotel, because I've just got to do more. And then when they go back home, they've enjoyed their time in Atlanta, and now they're back in Paducah, Kentucky, and now they say, shoot, I never got to see a Braves game. I need to go back to Atlanta. I need to experience more, because I obviously couldn't take it all in one trip. So going back to content and real, authoritative, honest content, crowdsourcing is a fantastic way of accomplishing that. I've said it from the mountaintops since even before I worked here at What Counts. We're not our audience. We're just not. We may think that we have a world-class design team and, you've got the best minds in travel marketing putting together your strategic planning, and, your social messaging is awesome because you think you hired this awesome social media coordinator. But if that content isn't resonating, if that design isn't eliciting engagement, if your website bounce rates are catastrophically high, something's wrong. We're not our audience, and every audience is different. So your customers, your subscribers, that's your greatest source of intelligence about whether or not your marketing programs are doing their job correctly. And there are a number of ways to attack this crowdsourcing tactic. My favorite one is analytics. Now, this is a little bit more difficult, especially now that Google has encrypted all searches as of September 23rd. But that being said, Google Webmaster Tools is still storing search data for the last 90 days. Now, it's rounded up. It is not terribly accurate. It is it's very slightly fudged numbers, so it is still not an accurate, a completely 100% accurate representation of the search terms that people are using to find your website. But it's still something that can give you kind of a little bit of intelligence about the search terms and the queries that are generating click-throughs to your website, to your destination. So as a result, remember what I said about cross-channel marketing and making sure that experience is consistent. If you're seeing incredibly high click-through rates on certain search terms for your destination, I'm begging you, throw that into your subject line. Because if it's resonating in one channel, at least try to see if it resonates in another channel. The same works for social media. You know, if you have great opening click rates on a particular subject line, try that in a social media message. See if that resonates. It may resonate, it may fall flat on its face, but at least you're doing something with a little bit of intelligence behind it. And another part of crowdsourcing is to listen to those opt-outs. I know it's a little painful to say goodbye to people on your mailing list, but it's still a valuable gauge as to whether or not your content is awesome or whether or not your content needs to go back to square one and take a little bit of a step back and say, okay, maybe we need to try this. So any reputable email service provider is going to allow people to specify the reason for opting out of your mailing list. So, for example, if you're seeing that they're telling you, this email is coming way too frequently, I do not need to hear from you once a week, then maybe you need to offer an opt-down. Maybe you need to offer, a monthly or a quarterly email in addition to the weekly, and allow people to simply specify their preferences. As I mentioned earlier, travel is a long-form proposition. Oftentimes people are booking trips 6, 7, 8, 12 months in advance, so they don't necessarily want to hear about stuff that's going on right now when they're not going to Seattle until next July. So again, it's important and imperative to always be listening to those people. And then I mentioned that inboxing is always a challenge for any marketer, but especially now as we get closer to the end of the year. So historically speaking, we've seen this for many years here at What Counts. Inbox placement gets a lot more difficult beginning in November. Everyone's sending more emails. Everyone's sending more promotions. Everyone's sending travel discounts, go home for the holidays. So with that increased volume, that puts a lot more strain on servers. Google may have all the money in the world, but they still need to have the infrastructure. They need to pay for the infrastructure to make sure that Gmail keeps on working properly. The same with Yahoo, the same with Comcast. That increased volume means that they get a lot more stringent with what they actually allow to go through to the inbox and what they simply just shunt off and don't even process and get sent over to the bulk folder, or worse even yet, they block it entirely. So there are a lot of reasons for this, but there are still ways you can get into the inbox as an email marketer. So Gmail is the big dog in the room. That's the one that everyone talks about. And traditionally, it's been one of the more restrictive B2C filters ever since they bought Postini and rolled that into their B2B filtering for Google Apps. That holds true as well. Postini is by far the nastiest and most stringent B2B filter there is out there, outside of the iron port firewalls that are manually configured by a corporation on their own. So inboxing at Gmail, it's ridiculously engagement-based, and engagement goes beyond the open. It goes through clicks and shares and forwards, things that actually tell you and tell Google that you're interacting with this email, that you want to get it, that you're interested in it. And as a result, it is incredibly important to suppress inactive subscribers. Used to be, even as recently as a year ago, you'd say, okay, if someone hasn't interacted with my stuff for more than a year, okay, let's try and win them back, but then let's start suppressing them. Now we've been seeing that even 6 months, as much as that hurts, especially for a travel marketer, 6 months can be a threshold for impacting delivery. In addition to that, it's also very important to keep content fresh and to not simply be sending the same stuff over and over and over again. If your template is 3 years old, freshen it up. make sure your code is clean. HTML and CSS evolve over the years. So please make sure that you're not sending emails that look like they were coded in 1999, because Google wants to see that you are a responsible, attentive sender who is sending to engaged and interested individuals. Then the other big dog is Yahoo. They dropped a bomb in June. They were very quiet about it. They were very sneaky about it. But they said that any email account, any Yahoo account in total that hadn't had a login within the last 365 days as of July 15th was getting released and put out into the wild for anybody to claim. And that's huge for deliverability, because all of a sudden you could have a ton of Yahoo accounts that simply didn't exist in your database. And we don't know if this is a rolling recycling, if they do it every month, if they're doing it once a quarter. They haven't said. They're playing things very, very close to the chest. So again, it's incredibly important to suppress any inactive Yahoo subscribers that you have, and also to make sure that your hard bounce threshold is set to 1. And by bounce threshold, I mean that if an email address hard bounces even once in your system, it is automatically suppressed. And again, any reputable email service provider will allow you to set that. And the biggest risk here is that unclaimed addresses may or may not, we still do not have definitive information on this, they may still be recycled into spam traps. And hitting a Yahoo spam trap is going to put you on a blacklist, and it takes years to build your reputation as an email sender, as a reputable, good, honest sender. It can take as little as one spam trap to ruin that reputation, and it can take a very, very long time to dig out of that hole. And additionally, always employ best practices when you're sending an email. And those opt-outs, those unsubscribes, treat them for the honest feedback that they are. Someone simply doesn't want to get your stuff anymore, and that's okay. Monitor your IP reputation, monitor your complaint rate. Email service providers start to get a little twitchy when they see a complaint rate go above 0.2 or 0.3%. We talked about the importance of sending to engaged subscribers. Don't buy a list. I swear, if there's one thing that every travel marketer should take away from this, don't ever, 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 ever buy a list. Every time you buy a list, God kills a kitten. Please think of the kittens. And then finally, understand that not every subscriber is created equal. Some people are just going to be one-time visitors to your destination. Maybe they had a bad experience. Maybe they did see everything that they wanted to see, and they don't like to visit the same place twice. Then there are other people who they're evangelists of your area. Someone who lives in Chicago but then wants to go to Dubuque, Iowa every year. Those people are awesome. They're valuable. You want to hang on to them. But it is okay to say goodbye to the people who just don't really they don't really present any value to you anymore. I know I said earlier that an email address is your most valuable asset as a digital marketer, but if that email address just isn't doing anything anymore, it's okay. As the philosopher Dr. Jones said in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, let it go. And that was about the end of my presentation there, guys. So please pepper me with questions. Let me know what's puzzling you. What do you disagree with? What can I help you? How can I help you guys sell?
Thanks, Tim. First of all, a lot of great stuff in there. So thanks for going through that with the whole team. If you were to say, because what we want to do is take this information with some background now. If you were to say, if I'm a CVB today and I'm thinking about email, or I'm just thinking about digital as a whole, what would be the biggest 3 challenges that they're faced with?
The biggest challenge is easily old, outdated lists that haven't been cleaned in a long time. I think I mentioned this in the sales team meeting following our trip to San Francisco, in that the travel world understand, they've always done email. They've always had this understanding that they need to do email, but there's never been this understanding of why they need to do email. And there's, with a couple of notable exceptions, there's never been a real understanding of how to do it right. So that's the big thing. A lot of bureaus out there have lists with addresses that haven't engaged with anything. I mean, even in the last 5 years. I fought that continuous battle when I was here in Madison at the Convention and Visitors Bureau. We had a database of something like 30 or 40,000 people, and all but 6,000 of them had not interacted with an email in the last 2 years. And I fought tooth and nail to get that list cleaned, to start wiping people out. And there's still, in many cases, an old school mindset of list size is the most important thing, as opposed to list health being the most important thing.
So when thinking about a CVB or somebody in this sector, no, let's just say CVB, what do you think is a good rule for an inactive subscriber? Certainly, I don't think it fits a retail model, which is a shorter version of that. If you see, if you haven't seen opens or clicks in X period of time, what is the recommendation maybe for re-engagement or removal?
I would say the first piece of that, and I would say the most important piece of that, is making sure that, this is more important in travel than any other vertical, I would say, is to have a number of different mailings and make sure it's as easy as possible for someone to specify when they want to get information. Again, if someone visited a destination, they do want to come back, but it might not be for a while. It needs to be as easy as possible for them to say, okay, I don't want the weekly stuff. Just send me something every quarter, or send me something every 2 months. It doesn't take a lot of time to put that content together, but it's a very, very strong asset to make sure that you're retaining customers, but you're not causing unnecessary inbox fatigue. When it comes to actually opting out, unsubscribing, what I have heard from my own colleagues in the sector is after 7 to 8 months of inactivity, that's when you start really, saying, okay, are you interested in coming back? Here's a great hotel discount. Here's a restaurant discount, or restaurant week is coming up. Things like that. But I mean, especially after a year,
7-8 months. So 7-8 months of no engagement, some kind of re-engagement. Segment them, make some kind of engagement campaign.
Yes.
Okay, let me ask you this then, because you brought up kind of the preference center. If you had to say, and I know it's not completely scientific, how many have decent preference centers that measure interest and frequency?
Probably 25% at most.
So that's definitely a talking point then as we go out and engage is, do you have a preference center? What are you collecting? If you have one, certainly you should be collecting interests by category, but a big one, and you mentioned it before, is frequency as well. Is there anything else that's valuable when you think about that preference center, in the sector?
It never ever hurts to ask for the dates of travel when someone is signing up for your newsletter, or they're registering to have you mail them a visitor's guide, things like that. That's a huge tool. Not everyone is going to want to give it to you, but just like asking for an email address or asking for more information about a subscriber, the worst they can say is no. And at best, you get even more intelligence about, okay, their travel is ending on November 11th. A week later, we're going to send them an email and say, okay, how was your trip?
Yeah. One of the surprising things that I've witnessed in this sector is I don't see a lot of sophisticated email marketing. I see a surprising old school batch and blast approach You know, do you agree with that? And the litmus that I use, you know, are the two that I have signed up for, one of them being the Atlanta, which I was really dismayed and have been because I continue to get really was lousy email from them. Do you see that most of these people acknowledge, okay, when I get a subscriber, I go through a welcome series and I try and set the tone. I offer them a preference center. Then based on that, I segment them by the specific things that they are looking for. Then I put other promotional offers out there. Or do you see really just a batch and blast mentality? Maybe comment on that a little bit.
Sure. I would say that in the vast majority of travel clients or travel and tourism marketers that I have seen, done business with, just explored their email, there is very much in this industry, it's slowly starting to change, but the vast majority of the mindset is, but this is the way we've always done it. And there's a very strong resistance to anything else, to shaking that boat up, because a lot of these people have been doing the destination marketing thing for 20 plus years, and they're still stuck in the mentality of, oh, well, the way to capture someone is to mail them a printed visitor's guide, and then they're just going to come to our destination, because that's the way it worked in the 1970s. Travel agents are in much the same boat.
So do you think that it's a rich story, it might be a loaded question, to talk about personalization in lifecycle email marketing?
I think it is a huge talking point. I think it is a huge opportunity, especially now as, you know, just as cycles are what they are, there is more openness to new thinking, and I mean not really new thinking, but just modern thinking coming into the industry, and I think that's twofold. One, there are two reasons for that. One is just new people coming in and understanding what works and why it works. I mean, I have a firsthand example of that from the new director of marketing here at the Greater Madison Convention Visitors Bureau, who has been talking with us here at What Counts about saying, oh my God, we've been terrible at email. How can you help us? And then there's also what I said earlier about that DMOs, destination marketing organizations, they have finally started to pull their heads out of the sand and realized that here in the year of our Lord 2013, their relevance is very, very, very much at risk, and they are very much in danger of being rendered completely worthless. And you know, there's kind of a panic mentality that's setting in.
Very good. Very good. Anybody else? I don't want to monopolize.
I think I put them to sleep.
Yeah, Tim, when, you know, how are many of these CVBs, I guess, developed? Not developed, like, give us insight into the kind of like the structure of them. So is there a director of marketing? Is there a director of digital? Is there, you know, CMO? Or is it, you know, how is it kind of structured?
Sure, and a lot of that depends on the size of the CVB, because the Los Angeles Convention Visitors Authority is going to do things very differently from the way we did things here in Madison, for example.
Yeah.
And especially with budgets being tight, you know, you often have one marketing manager doing the job of 3 people. But generally speaking, you'll have the CEO is almost always a former director of sales or VP of sales. And then beneath that, there's usually a director of marketing or a VP of marketing. And below that, there are usually at least 1 or 2 marketing managers.
Gotcha. So, I mean, who's, I mean, generally, I mean, are they, you know, when you're kind of selling this to a CVB, I mean, it's all about the idea of just more hotel rooms, right? And that's the end goal, right? Driving revenue to their hotels.
The hotels and other industry partners, assuming it's a partner-based DMO. Not all CVBs are partner-based, which is essentially a pay-to-play model. But again, as I mentioned, these organizations are funded by occupancy of hotels. So
Yeah.
that tax is collected by the city, and then a portion is allocated towards the tourism fund for that year. So any convention and visitors bureau is going to tell you that they have two goals. They want to fill the hotels, they want to fill the convention centers. They want to book meetings
Gotcha.
and conventions.
Gotcha.
If you had to engage with the CVB today, what would be your opening point as far as how you think we can help them with email marketing?
It would probably depend. I mean, my first thing would be to subscribe to their newsletter and hopefully get at least a welcome email or something in my inbox so I could see what they were doing. But I mean, Tony and I in San Francisco, we had a remarkable amount of success in, and Tony can probably speak to this again, in just kind of giving them a flashlight and showing them what they really didn't know, and that there is a whole world out there of personalization, not just based on affinity, but on any other data points that you can collect. A lot of tourism marketers don't realize that that is a huge thing. I mean, Tim, you mentioned this, that there's a batch and blast mentality. So it's a matter of two things. One, understanding the value of maybe a little bit of heavy lifting at first, putting together a database with custom fields and whatnot, and collecting that data at the point of opt-in, but also seeing just how ridiculously easy it is to create that kind of messaging through either one of our platforms, through both Publicaster and Professional. Because as I said a little while ago when I was talking to Matt, there's often one marketing manager who's doing the job of three people. When you can present that value proposition and say, okay, you can push some buttons here and you can send it these smart segmentations, and no, it's not going to take you 8 hours to do. It's going to take you 10 minutes. That's the key. Anything that can make these people's lives easier while they're struggling for time and resources and trying to stay sane, that's how we win.
Good stuff. All right, anybody else?
Yeah, this is Charlie. Tim, I have a question for you.
Go.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hello?
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay. What issues have you come across dealing with funded? I mean, it seems like from several of my interactions, they're kind of reliant on factors and issues outside of their own control. What have you seen in terms of what kind of budgets they have and what needs to happen to get them to allocate dollars to email marketing?
You're definitely right. There are a lot of funding challenges, and again, it does vary by size. I mean, Las Vegas has a ton more money to spend than the folks in, I mentioned Paducah, Kentucky. I actually know those folks. They have a 3-person CVB, and all they talk about is quilting. So a lot of it, again, goes back to selling the value. I mentioned the Greater Madison Convention and Visitors Bureau here. When I was there, we were a very low-tier client. I think we were paying something like $500 a month, and I was screaming from the heavens to, pull money from the website budget, stop spending so much on convention sales budget that wasn't doing anything, and throw it towards our digital marketing because, we could have been doing so much more. And now finally they have a new director of marketing who actually gets it. So one of our folks in the Baltimore office has been working with her, and I'll probably have an on-site meeting there sometime in December. But now all of a sudden they want to engage with us for like $15,000 of strategic services and creative because they understand, oh, wow, we actually do need to put some real legitimate resources behind it. So I think when it comes to funding and those challenges and convincing them, it can be a little difficult, because you do need to track ROI, you need to show the return, but all of these convention and visitors bureaus, they have their own internal booking engines for hotels, so they can sometimes get a commission or they can track the results of their own marketing programs. But it doesn't take much to put a Publicast or conversion tracking code on a booking confirmation page in their engine, and all of a sudden 2 emails later they see real trackable results. That's what I was doing at the tail end of my time in Madison, right before I moved over here to What Counts. We were running a summer campaign focused around all the events and whatnot, and trying to get people to book hotel rooms as a result of seeing our emails. And we were seeing something like, I forget the exact numbers, but I mean, again, $500 a month, so our CPM wasn't terribly high, but we were seeing returns as high as 20, 30, 40 hotel rooms just as a result of an email going out to a small segment of a couple hundred people. So again, it's all about showing the value and kind of convincing them that, okay, maybe we can move some money from this to that, from that to this, and I mean, sometimes it even involves getting a member of their board in the room to say, oh, okay, maybe I will up my investment for this program. The boards of directors of these organizations are very, very ridiculously influential. Does that answer your question, Charlie?
Yes, thank you.
Anybody else? I am an open book.
Doesn't sound like there's any takers. Well, Tim, I appreciate you doing this, and I know we recorded this, so if you'll forward that on to Agatha or Monica, and then we'll post this on the Google Drive.
Yeah, I'll get this. I'll get the recording edited so we can trim out the beginning and the end, and I'll try and have that put up by the end of the day tomorrow.
Perfect. Bye, man. Thanks again.
Thanks, everybody, for attending. Again, if you're on the phone with a travel prospect and you need some backup, you need some advice, or you just want me to talk to these folks, just let me know, and I am more than happy to hop on a call.
Woohoo! All right, Timmy. Thanks again.
All right, thanks, guys.